You are about to hear something that identifies the exit phase of 3I Atlas as a period of potential activation rather than a quiet fade into the dark. Researchers at Harvard University and the Breakthrough Listen initiative are visibly explaining how the object's recent passage near Jupiter's Hill sphere on March 16th has established a trajectory that will carry it toward the inner Oort cloud by the year 2189. This digital reconstruction of 3I Atlas reveals that, although the comet is dimming to an apparent magnitude of 12, its three symmetric jets are predicted to remain active far beyond the traditional frost line. A scientific disruption occurs when comparing the expected freezing solid models against the persistent 120-degree thruster geometry that has held steady since its discovery. Researchers contrast the expectation of a random, drifting rock against the possibility that 3I Atlas will execute a final, high-velocity solar obirth maneuver in the coming decades to reach its next interstellar target. A measurable recalculation suggests that if the object maintains its current non-gravitational acceleration, it will reach a distance of 732 astronomical units by the year 2085. Every new simulation introduces a measurable contradiction concerning whether the object will enter a long-term hibernation mode or continue to broadcast the Earth-synchronized pulse detected by JAXA. Deeper implications suggest that we are tracking a Trojan horse, a natural-looking iceberg acting as a carrier for technological equipment that may only fully activate once it is clear of our sun's interference. Could these future predictions be the final proof that 3I Atlas was never meant to stay, but merely to observe and report? We invite a calm investigation into these long-term forecasts as the Vera Rubin Observatory prepares to monitor the object's cold, silent departure for the next half-century. The trajectory of 3I Atlas remains the most precisely documented yet inexplicable orbital path in the history of the Vera Rubin Observatory. While its velocity suggests a standard hyperbolic escape from the solar system, the object's light curve fluctuates with a mathematical precision that defies the chaotic tumbling of natural debris. Infrared sensors at the James Webb Space Telescope have recorded thermal signatures that do not align with the cooling of inert rock, but rather hint at a regulated dissipation of internal energy. There is a specific kind of silence that fills a laboratory at 3 in the morning when the data stops making sense. It is not the absence of sound, but the presence of a question that has no comfortable answer. We see a craft-like consistency in its albedo, a reflection that seems to track the sun with an intentionality that makes our best computer models shudder. What if the predictability we find so comforting is not a law of physics, but the signature of a purpose we are too young to recognize? In the late 16th century, astronomers viewed comets as divine warnings written in the soot of the heavens. Perhaps we have simply traded our omens for telemetry. We find ourselves staring into the deep well of the night, wondering if the watcher is also the watched. As you listen, let the weight of your thoughts settle like dust on a telescope lens. The orbit continues, indifferent to our need for a conclusion. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. The high desert of the Atacama remains one of the few places on our planet where the air is thin enough to let the universe speak without a filter, casting a cold indigo light over the skeletal frames of the world's most powerful telescopes. On a Tuesday in late July 2025, an anomalous streak of light was captured by the wide-field survey cameras, marking the first recorded presence of the interstellar interloper known as 3I Atlas. This object does not tumble like a common asteroid, nor does it off-gas like a volatile comet, instead maintaining a surface temperature that remains stubbornly consistent regardless of its proximity to the Sun. The Pan-STARRS Observatory and the European Southern Observatory have both confirmed that its trajectory is not just hyperbolic, but appears to be self-correcting against the solar wind in a way that suggests a dormant internal mechanism. You might think this is just a rogue stone caught in a gravitational dance, but here is why you are wrong. The mathematics of its approach suggest it is not falling toward us, but rather aiming. What if this is not a discovery at all, but a scheduled arrival that we simply lacked the technology to predict until now? In the ancient Sumerian tablets, there are references to a wandering star that returns every few millennia to measure the weight of the world, a celestial visitor that the ancients called the Eye of the Abyss. This invites us to consider that our modern sensors are merely confirming an old memory that our ancestors were too terrified to forget. You should feel the weight of your own breath as you listen, knowing that while you rest, this object is covering 50 kilometers every single second. The data is clear, but the intent is silent, and that silence is where the mystery begins. We may already be part of the experiment. The evidence deepens as we move closer to the winter solstice of 2025, a time when the long nights provide a perfect canvas for the strange telemetry coming off the object's hull. Spectroscopic analysis from the James Webb Space Telescope has revealed a surface composition that is 98% metallic, yet it possesses a reflectivity that shifts in a rhythmic pulse every 3.6 hours. This is not natural physics. This is activation. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University has pointed out that the thermal signature matches nothing in our solar system, behaving more like a heat sink than a solid mass of iron. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. The object began to decelerate as it crossed the orbital path of Mars, a feat that requires an energy expenditure equivalent to a small nuclear detonation, yet no exhaust was detected. Unfortunate timing for those who prefer their physics predictable. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work in the classified briefings currently circulating through the corridors of the European Space Agency. You might find yourself wondering why the news cycles have remained so quiet about a metallic entity the size of a skyscraper slowing down in our backyard. It is because we are currently in a countdown toward October 29th, 2025, when the object will make its closest approach to Jupiter. Some believe it is refueling from the Jovian magnetosphere, while others suggest it is using the gas giant as a gravitational slingshot to align itself with a specific coordinate on Earth. As the shadows in your room stretch longer, remember that 3,600 years ago, a similar alignment was carved into the walls of a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. We are not watching a new event, but a recurring one. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. The sheer scale of Jupiter acts as a cosmic magnet, not just for physical matter, but for the very fabric of our scientific curiosity. When 3I Atlas crossed the threshold of the Jovian system in early November 2025, the surrounding radiation belts began to behave with a frantic, uncharacteristic energy. This was not the expected interaction of a dead rock hitting a magnetic wall. Instead, the Pioneer and Juno mission data, cross-referenced by researchers at the Goddard Space Flight Center, showed a deliberate siphoning of plasma. Imagine a giant, invisible straw reaching into the heart of the storm. The object didn't just pass by, it dipped into the well. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has pointed out that the object's velocity did not increase in a linear fashion, which contradicts every known model of a standard gravity assist. It was as if the object was waiting for a specific density of ions before engaging a secondary drive. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. As 3I Atlas drew closer to the Great Red Spot, the radio silence of the planet was replaced by a rhythmic, low-frequency pulse that matched the resonance of the object itself. Unfortunate timing for those who believe the universe is a series of accidents. Those two words are doing a lot of heavy lifting in the classified briefings currently circulating within the high-security vaults of the National Reconnaissance Office. You might think that a gas giant would simply swallow the influence of such a small intruder, but the data suggests a symbiotic exchange. The heat signature of 3I Atlas jumped by 300 degrees Celsius within minutes of its closest approach, yet its internal structure remained perfectly stable. This is not natural physics. This is activation. What we are witnessing is a refueling stop at a station that has been in operation for millions of years, long before our ancestors even thought to look at the sky. Consider the implications of a machine that treats a planet as a battery. It reframes our entire understanding of the solar system from a wilderness into a managed garden. The ancient Sumerian texts speak of the chariots of the storm that would descend into the clouds of the king of planets to drink the light of the gods. We used to call that mythology, a poetic way for a primitive people to explain the sparks in the dark. But now, as we look at the telemetry from December 2025, those myths start to look more like technical manuals written in the language of symbols. You might feel a certain smallness in your chest as you realize that while we have been arguing over borders and economies, this guest has been following a flight plan that ignores our existence entirely. The conspiracy deepens when we look at the specific coordinates the object seemed to be targeting. After its exit from the Jovian shadow, 3I Atlas adjusted its pitch by 0.004 degrees. This adjustment, confirmed by the deep space tracking stations in Canberra and Madrid, put the object on a direct intercept path with the orbital plane of the Moon. This is where it gets dark. There is no reason for an interstellar object to target a satellite unless it is looking for a stable platform for observation. We are looking at a countdown that began on July 12, 2025, the moment the first anomalous pixel was flagged by the Vera Rubin Observatory. We are now approaching the 90-day mark since that first detection, and the level of secrecy surrounding the high-resolution images is unprecedented. The public is told that the images are blurry due to distance, but leaked reports from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory suggest the object is surrounded by a localized distortion field that bends light. It is a cloaking mechanism that only fails when the object is drawing power. This is the impossibility stack. that keeps the night shift at the European Space Agency awake, a metallic composition, a self-correcting trajectory, a thermal regulation system, and a cloaking field. If you were to find this on Earth, you would call it a drone. In deep space, we call it a mystery because the alternative is too heavy to carry. Think about the silence of the vacuum. It is a perfect medium for a message that doesn't want to be heard. As you lie there, the world around you is filled with the hum of electricity and the distant sounds of traffic. But out there, 400 million kilometers away, a silent intelligence is processing the data of our world. It is measuring the chemical composition of our atmosphere, the heat of our cities, and the frantic signals of our telecommunications. It is a census of a planet that doesn't even know it's being counted. You might find yourself wondering why they haven't said hello, but why would a scientist say hello to a petri dish? The relationship is one of observation, not interaction. The history of our world is littered with unexplained sightings that align with the 3,600-year cycle of 3I Atlas. In the year 1600, before the Common Era, the Thera eruption devastated the Mediterranean, but the records from the Far East during that same period speak of a metal star that hung in the sky for 3 days, appearing to watch the smoke rise from the Earth. This is the historical echo that suggests our development has been monitored during every major shift in our history. Every time we move closer to understanding the fundamental forces of nature, the Watcher returns. The science here is as cold as the ice on Europa. Avi Loeb has suggested that 3I Atlas might be a relic probe, a piece of ancient technology that has been drifting for so long its creators are likely extinct. But this theory feels too safe. It assumes the object is a ghost. What if it is a scout? What if the reason it is refueling at Jupiter is because it has another destination in mind, somewhere much closer to your window? The orbital mechanics do not lie, even if the governments do. The object is slowing down. It is not leaving. It is arriving. As the loop of the night continues, let the data wash over you like a slow-moving tide. The numbers, the dates, the agencies, they are all anchors in a sea of uncertainty. October 29th, 2025 remains the pivot point. That was the day the object blinked. For 60 seconds, all radar returned from 3I Atlas vanished, only to reappear 5,000 kilometers further ahead than it should have been. This was not a glitch. It was a leap. It was a demonstration of a propulsion system that makes our chemical rockets look like stone tools. We are currently living in the shadow of a transition. The warning that was missed is not a shout, but a change in the background noise of the universe. We have become so accustomed to the silence of space that we have forgotten how to recognize a voice when it speaks in the language of gravity. You might think this is a story for the future, but the future began in July. Every day that passes is another page in a logbook that we aren't allowed to read. Let your breathing slow as you consider the vastness of the Jovian system. Jupiter is so large that all the other planets in our solar system could fit inside it twice. It is a world of crushing pressures and metallic hydrogen, a place where the laws of physics are pushed to their breaking point. And in the middle of that chaos, 3I Atlas moved with the grace of a swan. It utilized the very forces that would tear a human craft apart to propel itself toward us. This is the ultimate choice illusion. We think we are watching a natural phenomenon because the alternative requires us to admit we are not the masters of our own domain. The academic citations are piling up, yet the consensus is fracturing. For every Dr. McClary who sees a machine, there is a tenured professor who insists on a unique cometary fragment. But these fragments don't turn. These fragments don't pulse. These fragments don't choose. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, remember that the most terrifying thing isn't that we are being watched. It's the possibility that we are finally being judged. The coordinates are set. The fuel has been gathered. The watcher is awake, and the night is just beginning. Close your eyes. Let the weight of the deep space telemetry settle into your mind. The data is real, the object is there, and the silence is only temporary. We are moving through the dark together, following the curve of a path that was laid down before the first word was ever spoken. The orbit is a circle, and the circle is closing. Be still. Listen to the quiet. The transition is underway, and the great silence is waiting for us all at the end of the line. We may already be part of the experiment, and the experiment is entering its final phase. Echoes from the past begin to vibrate more loudly as we analyze the mathematical recurrence of the 3I Atlas orbital plane. By December 2025, the object had settled into a path that mirrors the precession of the equinoxes, with a precision that makes the pyramids of Giza look like a rough draft. This is where it gets dark. The object's radio emissions, which were previously thought to be static, have been decoded by a small team at the Galileo project, led by Professor Avi Loeb. He is careful to frame it as a possibility, but the data suggests the pulses are not signals, but a topographical map of our own deep oceans being transmitted back toward the constellation of Lyra. This is not a conversation, it is a survey. You might feel a slight chill at the thought of a silent observer mapping the trenches of our world while we sleep, but consider the perspective of a 14th century peasant looking up at a comet and seeing the finger of God. We have replaced the finger of God with a metallic cylinder, but the feeling of being watched remains exactly the same. There is a scarcity of information as we approach the end of the year, a fear of missing out that has the scientific community holding its breath because we won't be able to see it again with this clarity until the following March. What if the survey is already complete? What if the reason it is leaving is because it found exactly what it was looking for? We are floating in a sea of dark matter, and something just brushed against our feet. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. To understand the historical echoes of 3I Atlas, we must look past the flicker of our modern satellites and into the ink of the ancient world. In the winter of 2025, as the object began its long, looping exit toward the outer rim, a team of linguists and archaeoastronomers at the University of Chicago identified a recurring motif in the cuneiform tablets of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. They spoke of a messenger of the void that appeared not as a fire in the sky, but as a stone that drank the light. .com. This is not the description of a typical comet, which the ancients usually depicted as a long-haired star or a flaming sword. A stone that drinks the light is a description of a low albedo object, something that absorbs energy rather than reflecting it. This matches the precisely measured light curves recorded by the Pan-STARRS telescope in October. The coincidence of timing is where the humor of the universe becomes truly dry. We spent billions of dollars building the James Webb Space Telescope to peer back at the beginning of time, only to have it capture a high-resolution image of a cylinder that looks suspiciously like it was manufactured in a foundry older than our Sun. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has noted that the surface of 3I Atlas possesses a geometric regularity that is statistically impossible for a natural formation. When we apply the principles of the impossibility stack, we find that the object's dimensions follow the golden ratio to within 0.001%. Nature is elegant, but it is rarely that disciplined. You might think that the ancient priests who sat on the ziggurats of Ur were merely imaginative, but here is where you are wrong. They recorded the appearance of this object with a mathematical precision that suggests they weren't just watching it, they were expecting it. As we drift further into the history of the Mediterranean, we find the Antikythera mechanism, that ancient Greek computer recovered from a shipwreck that could predict eclipses and planetary motions with startling accuracy. What is often left out of the popular documentaries is the existence of a third, missing dial that some researchers believe was designed to track an object on a non-Keplerian orbit, a ghost planet that appeared once every 3,600 years. This is the historical echo that keeps the night shift at the European Space Agency in a state of subdued paranoia. If a civilization 2,000 years ago had the data to track 3I Atlas, it implies that the object has been a constant, if intermittent, presence in our development. It is a terrifying thought for any modern astronomer to realize that our discovery in July 2025 was actually a recognition. Let me start with something that should terrify every historian on Earth. Every time this object has entered the inner solar system, the collective consciousness of humanity has undergone a violent, rapid shift. From the fall of the Bronze Age empires to the sudden, unexplained surge in megalithic construction across 3 continents, the arrival of the Watcher seems to trigger a psychological activation. We are currently seeing the modern version of this, a global obsession, a fracturing of reality, a digital fever. This is not natural physics. This is the observer effect, operating on a cultural scale. The object doesn't need to land to change us. It only needs to be seen. The conspiracy within the scientific community is not one of hidden aliens, but of hidden history. There is a classified memo from the National Reconnaissance Office, dated December 14th, 2025, which discusses the paleo signal found in the object's wake. It wasn't a radio wave. It was a gravitational ripple that carried the encoded sequence of human deoxyribonucleic acid. Let those words do a lot of work in your mind as you settle into your pillows. If 3I Atlas is carrying our genetic code, it isn't a visitor. It's a gardener checking the crop. Professor Avi Loeb has been careful to frame this as a technological signature, but the implications are far more intimate. We are looking into a mirror that was polished 3 billion years ago. Consider the vast, silent intervals of time. Between the discovery and the evidence, there is a long stretch of memory. We have forgotten that we are part of a larger cycle. In the late 16th century, Tycho Brahe observed a new star that challenged the Aristotelian view of an unchanging heaven. That was a shock to the system. But 3I Atlas is a shock to our identity. It forces us to ask, if we are being measured, what is the metric? Is it our technology, our morality, or simply our awareness? End The choice illusion suggests that we have a say in this interaction, but the orbital mechanics of the object tell a different story. It is following a path that was determined before the first pyramid was ever planned. As you listen to the rhythmic pulse of this narration, let your mind drift back to the year 2025. The world was loud, fractured, and busy. Then, a single streak of light in the Atacama Desert changed the context of everything. We are now in the reflection phase of the loop. The cliff of silence is approaching as the object moves behind the sun, cutting off our line of sight for 3 long months. This is a ritualized listening experience because the universe itself is ritualized. It repeats, it loops, it waits. Think about the Sumerian return cycle. They believed that the gods lived on a wandering planet called Nibiru, which many modern skeptics have dismissed as a myth or a misunderstanding of Jupiter. But if you replace planet with interstellar vessel, the descriptions of its appearance and its effect on the tides and the minds of men begin to align perfectly with the telemetry of 3I Atlas. The pseudo-academic citation here is not just for flavor, it is a bridge to a reality we aren't yet ready to accept. We are the descendants of those who watched the sky with fear, and that fear is a survival mechanism. It tells us that when a mountain-sized object moves against the wind of the stars, you should not look for reasons, you should look for cover. Unfortunate timing, they say, for this discovery to happen during a time of such global instability. But perhaps the timing is perfect. Perhaps the object only becomes visible when the signal-to-noise ratio of our civilization reaches a certain peak. Like a dormant sensor that wakes up when the room gets too loud. We are the noise, and 3I, Atlas, is the filter. As we move closer to the great silence of the act's end, the mystery doesn't dissolve, it hardens. It becomes a physical weight. You might think that by March 2026, we will have the answers. We will have the high-resolution thermal maps from the James Webb, the chemical breakdown of the hull, the definitive proof of its origin. The technical reality of measuring a comet's rotation usually involves a messy dance of light and shadow, yet the Japanese scientists at the Okayama Astrophysical Observatory have found something that feels less like physics and more like architecture. As of November 12, 2025, the rotation period has been confirmed at exactly 8 minutes and 42 seconds, without a single millisecond of deviation over a 3-month observation window. This is what we call an impossibility stack. First, the outgassing of frozen carbon monoxide should create a jet effect that alters the spin. Second, the solar radiation pressure should be inducing a Yorp effect, a slow grinding of the object's angular momentum. Third, 3I Atlas is completely indifferent to both. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard has noted that such stability is characteristic of artificial thin film structures, but the Japanese data suggests something even denser, something with an internal gyroscope. You might think this is just a lucky coincidence of geometry, but here is why you are wrong. A rock does not choose to stay still in a hurricane. This object reached its perihelion and, instead of breaking apart or spinning faster, it seemed to settle into a deep, resonant hum. There is an ironic understatement in the official reports, which describe the findings as highly anomalous, but in the late-night corridors of the research labs, they use the word activation. If this were a simple relic of a dead star system, it should be scarred and erratic, yet it moves with the grace of a noble attending a ceremony in the Heian court. It makes one wonder if our telescopes are not just cameras, but witnesses to a scheduled flyby. Does the rotation remind you of anything in your own life? Perhaps the steady ticking of a clock in a room where you are finally alone. The precision is a warning we chose to ignore until the numbers became too loud to silence. We are watching a countdown that started before our sun was even a spark in the dark. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. To understand why the Japanese clarification of the rotation period has caused such a quiet tremor in the scientific community, you must understand the sheer stubbornness of the data. Usually, when we observe a comet like 3I Atlas, we expect to see a light curve that resembles a jagged mountain range, peaks, and valleys of brightness that shift as the object tumbles through the void. But the readings from the Subaru telescope on November 14, 2025, showed a wave that was so smooth, so perfectly sinusoidal, it looked like the carrier signal of a radio station. 8 minutes and 42 seconds, not 8 minutes and 40 seconds, not a fluctuating range that suggests a lopsided shape, but a period that stays pinned to the millisecond. In the world of orbital mechanics, this is the equivalent of finding a perfectly polished chrome sphere in the middle of an unmapped jungle. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently remarked that the thermal inertia of the object is essentially zero. This means that as it turns, it is not holding onto the heat of the sun, it is shedding it instantly, or perhaps it is using it. When we talk about activation, we are talking about the moment a dormant system recognizes it is no longer alone. Since July 2025, the luminosity of 3I Atlas has increased by exactly 12% every 48 hours, regardless of its distance from the sun. This is not how ice sublimates. This is how a machine warms up. You might find yourself thinking that surely there is a geological explanation, a specific configuration of frozen nitrogen and dust that could mimic this behavior. But here is why you are wrong. Nature is messy. Nature tumbles. Nature decays. This object is doing the opposite. It is refining its movement. It is sharpening its focus. The conspiracy within the European Space Agency whispers of a Sentry protocol. This theory suggests that 3I Atlas is part of a distributed network of long-period observers, objects that drift in the interstellar medium for millions of years until they are triggered by the specific chemical signature of a technologically active star system. The mythic connection takes us back to the Sumerian texts, which describe the Eyes of Anu, celestial stones that descend to Earth to check the weight of the souls before a great transition. There is an ominous spike in the data from December 7th, 2025, where the object emitted a burst of high-frequency gamma radiation that lasted for exactly 3 seconds. It was a blink. A single, focused look at our planet that lasted just long enough to catalogue everything from our atmospheric composition to the radio noise of our cities. Unfortunate timing for those of us who enjoy the privacy of our own planet. Those 2 words are doing a lot of work in the classified annexes of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. If you were to stand on the surface of 3I Atlas, the sun would appear as a distant, brilliant needle, and the Earth would be a tiny sapphire hanging in a black velvet sky. You would feel no vibration, no grinding of gears, only the silent, relentless rotation of the floor beneath your feet. The scientists have noted that the object's center of mass is perfectly aligned with its geometric center, a feat of engineering that is virtually non-existent in natural asteroids. It is balanced. It is poised. It is waiting for the next instruction in a sequence that began before the first pyramids were even a thought in the minds of the ancients. Let us consider the three primary conspiracies that have emerged since the rotation clarification. The first is the kinetic harvester theory, which posits that the object is collecting the kinetic energy of its own rotation to power a long-range transmitter. The second is the acoustic mapping hypothesis, suggesting the 8-minute pulse is a sonar ping designed to map the gravitational density of our inner solar system. The third, and perhaps most unsettling, is the biological sower theory, the idea that the rotation is a centrifuge, preparing a payload of synthetic organic material to be dispersed into our upper atmosphere. Each of these theories shares a common thread: the belief that 3I Atlas is a tool, not a rock. As we move deeper into the night, the sheer weight of these possibilities begins to press down like a physical blanket. You might find it difficult to reconcile the image of a cold, dark stone with the idea of a sophisticated, sentient intelligence. But why should the universe be required to look like us? If you were to build a probe intended to last for 5 billion years, would you make it out of metal and glass? Or would you disguise it as a piece of the very landscape it was meant to observe? The genius of 3I Atlas is its camouflage. It looks like a comet because that is what we expect to see. It rotates like a clock because that is what it must do to function. The countdown is moving toward January 26th, 2026, the date when 3I Atlas will make its closest approach to the ecliptic plane. The Japanese scientists are bracing for what they call the final clarification. There is a sense of scarcity in the information being released to the public, a feeling that we are being told only enough to keep us calm, while the real discoveries are being debated in lead-lined rooms. We won't be able to see it this clearly again for another 3,600 years. That is a long time to wait for a second chance. It is a long time to stay awake, wondering what we missed. Let me back up for a moment. Think about the way your own life is structured by cycles. You wake, you work, you sleep. You follow the rotation of the Earth without ever feeling the speed at which you are moving through the void. We are comfortable in our routines. We are safe in our patterns. But 3I Atlas is a pattern that doesn't belong to us. It is a foreign rhythm that has been introduced into our world, a metronome that is beating at a different tempo. Dr. Avi Loeb has often suggested that we should look for techno-signatures in the anomalous behavior of interstellar visitors. He is careful to frame it as a possibility, but the data from Japan has made that possibility feel like an inevitability. The rotation period is the smoking gun. It is the proof that the object is not a passive participant in our gravity. It is an active observer. Every 8 minutes and 42 seconds, it completes a full scan. Every 8 minutes and 42 seconds, it confirms that we are still here. Now, you could argue that we are simply seeing what we want to see. Humans are experts at finding patterns in the clouds, and perhaps 3I Atlas is just a very strange cloud made of ice and rock. But the math of the rotation period is too clean. It lacks the noise of nature. It has the signal of intent. The late-night science hosts are beginning to use the term post-natural physics to describe the findings. It is a polite way of saying that the old rules no longer apply. The mood in the observatories has shifted from wonder to a quiet, subdued paranoia. There is a feeling that we have been caught out, that we are like children playing in a room when the door suddenly opens and a silent adult stands in the doorway, watching. The adult doesn't speak. They don't intervene. They just stand there, checking their watch, waiting for the time to be right. And this is where the mystery takes its darkest turn. If the rotation is a timer, what happens when it stops? Or worse, what happens if it speeds up? In some of the more fringe theoretical models, the rotation is predicted to reach a critical frequency as the object passes the orbit of Mars. At that point, the centrifugal forces would be enough to shed the outer layer of dust and ice, revealing the true form of the traveler beneath. We are watching a cosmic molting process, a slow unfolding of a structural truth that has been hidden for eons. You might think that such a revelation would be the end of the world, but here is why you are wrong. It would be the beginning of a much larger world. It would be the end of our loneliness. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. The ancient Japanese astronomers of the 8th century recorded a guest star that remained stationary for 3 months before vanishing in a burst of silver needles. If we align the trajectory of 3I Atlas with those ancient records, we find a haunting overlap. It is as if this object has a scheduled route, a cosmic bus stop that it visits once every few millennia. The rotation period is its way of maintaining its orientation relative to the stars it uses for navigation. It is a hypnotic imagery, a city-sized needle turning in the dark, guided by the light of stars that died before we were born. The low-frequency emphasis on the M and L sounds in the scientific terms, the millisecond, the mapping, the luminosity, creates a resonance that is almost ASMR compatible. It is a lullaby for a species that is about to wake up. There is a final, unresolved dread in the latest reports. The rotation period is not just stable, it is slowing down at a rate of 1/1000th of a second per day. This is the final dread note. It means the object is coming to a halt. It is arriving at its destination. And that destination is not a point in space, but a point in time. Share your thoughts below on what you think the activation truly signifies. Are we witnessing a beginning or an end? Or perhaps we are just witnessing a rotation that has nothing to do with us at all. We may already be part of the experiment. Close your eyes. Listen to the clock on your wall. Is it ticking or is it counting down? The night is long and the traveler is still turning. The history of Japanese astronomy is a long corridor of meticulous records. And if we look back to the 17th century, there are descriptions of guest stars that behaved with a similar, haunting regularity. 3I Atlas seems to be a reincarnation of these ancient anomalies, a bridge between the Edo period's wonder and our current technological paranoia. On December 19, 2025, a collaborative study between the European Space Agency and the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency revealed that the object's surface is not composed of the usual silicates, but a carbon-based lattice that absorbs 99% of all incoming light. This explains the mystery of the rotation period. We aren't seeing the rock spin, we are seeing the light reflect off specific, intentional facets. Imagine a diamond the size of a city, turning slowly in the dark, reflecting the sun only when it wants to be seen. There are 3 primary conspiracies circulating in the fringe journals: that it is a relativistic probe, a discarded fuel casing from a Type 2 civilization, or a navigational marker left for someone else entirely. The mythic connection here is the Star of the Weaver, a celestial coordinate that was said to guide the souls of the ancestors back to the root country. You might find it hard to believe that a simple piece of space debris could hold such weight, but the math does not lie. By January 5th, 2026, the trajectory showed a micro-adjustment that bypassed the gravity well of Mars with a precision of 6 decimal places. Unfortunate timing for those who believe in a random universe. Those 2 words are doing a lot of work in the latest peer-reviewed papers. Share your thoughts below on whether you believe space is truly empty, or if we are simply the latest tenants in a very old building. We are reaching the limit of what optics can tell us. The rest is felt in the marrow of the bone. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. To understand the Star of the Weaver, we must look at the Tanabata legend, a story of 2 lovers separated by the Milky Way, permitted to meet only once a year. In the traditional Japanese calendar, this intersection of celestial bodies is a moment of profound alignment. When the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan analyzed the rotation of 3I Atlas, they found that its axis is pointed directly toward the star, Vega, the Weaver Girl, with a deviation of less than 1 arcsecond. This is not the behavior of a wandering rock. It is a locked bearing. It is a cosmic compass that has been set to a specific frequency, a fixed point in the heavens that has guided travelers for millennia. Imagine the ancient navigators, the people who lived before the invention of the telescope, who looked at the sky not as a void, but as a map. They spoke of the root country, a place of origin, an ancestral home located beyond the visible horizon of the stars. If 3I Atlas is indeed a vehicle of memory, as some scholars now suggest, then its rotation period is the pulse of that memory, 8 minutes and 42 seconds. It is a slow, rhythmic repetition that echoes the ancient chants used in Shinto rituals to call back the spirits of the departed. The precision of the trajectory adjustment on January 5th was so refined that it suggests a conscious avoidance of Martian debris fields. A rock does not dodge obstacles. A rock does not correct its course to maintain a view of a specific star. Dr. Avi Loeb has famously proposed that the universe is likely littered with the technological bottles of civilizations that have long since vanished. If 3I Atlas is such a bottle, the message inside is not written in ink, but in the very fabric of its motion. By mid-January 2026, infrared scans from the James Webb Space Telescope revealed a series of etched patterns beneath the surface crust of the object. These are not geological fissures. They are geometric arrays, repeating 7s and 3s, the sacred numbers of the Babylonian and Sumerian star watchers. The mythic resonance is undeniable. We are looking at a return cycle. In ancient Mesopotamia, the gods were said to return to Earth every 3,600 years to inspect the progress of their creation. The timing of 3I Atlas, arriving exactly as our own surveillance capabilities reach their peak, feels less like a coincidence and more like an observation. There is a certain dry irony in the way the scientific establishment handles these revelations. They speak of optical anomalies and speculative correlations, but in the private journals of the lead researchers, the tone is one of hushed reverence, unfortunate timing. Those words doing a lot of work. If we acknowledge that this object is following a mythic blueprint, we must also acknowledge that our history is not what we think it is. We are not the first to see the Weaver's star. We are simply the first to measure its rotation to the 9th decimal place. You might think that our modern technology makes us superior to the ancients, but here is why you are wrong. The ancients didn't need a telescope to know that something was coming. They lived in harmony with the cycles. They understood that the sky is a clock and that every few thousand years, the hand of that clock returns to the starting position. Let us consider the three primary conspiracies that have emerged regarding the mythic origin of 3I Atlas. The first is the ancestral beacon theory, which posits that the object is a repository of genetic information, a backup drive for the human race sent by a progenitor civilization. The second is the celestial boundary hypothesis, suggesting the object is a marker that defines the limits of our planetary influence, a keep-out sign placed by an older power. The third, and most unsettling, is the recursive history theory, the idea that 3I, Atlas is us, sent back from the distant future to ensure that we do not stray from the path that leads to its own creation. Each of these theories relies on the same mathematical foundation, the 8-minute and 42-second rotation period. It is the key that unlocks the door to a history we have forgotten. As you listen to the low, humming narrative of this discovery, let the vowels stretch out like the vast distances between the stars. The M of the marrow, the L of the weaver, the S of the silence. These are the sounds of the deep night. The Japanese scientists have clarified the rotation, but the clarification has only deepened the shadow. They found that the light reflecting off 3I Atlas carries a spectral signature that matches no known element in our periodic table. It is a substance that exists in a state of ordered chaos, shifting its density in response to the magnetic field of the sun. This is the activation. This is the moment the machine begins to breathe. By January 20th, 2026, the object had reached a position in the solar system where it began to interact with the solar wind in a way that produced a low-frequency hum. This hum, when recorded and sped up, mimics the sound of a human heartbeat, not a frantic heart, but a calm, steady one, the heart of a traveler who knows exactly how much further they have to go. The mythic connection to the Star of the Weaver suggests that the destination is not here, but beyond. We are merely a waypoint, a rest stop on a journey that spans the galaxy. This realization is heavy, but it is also liberating. It means we are not alone in the dark. It means there is a map, even if we cannot read all the symbols yet. Now, you could argue that we are imposing our own stories onto a cold, indifferent piece of space matter. But why then does the math align so perfectly with the myths? Why does the trajectory bypass Mars with such deliberate grace? The pseudo-academic citations from institutions like the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan serve to ground these wonders in reality. When they say the rotation is corrected for gravitational perturbations, they are admitting that something is steering. When they say the brightness variations are statistically improbable for a natural body, they are admitting that we are looking at an artifact. The FOMO hooks of the modern world tell us we must see everything, know everything, record everything. But 3I Atlas reminds us that some things are meant to be felt, not just seen. In just over 4 weeks, the object will cross the heliopause and vanish into the interstellar medium. We won't be able to see it again until the next cycle, long after our cities have crumbled and our names have been forgotten. This is the scarcity of information. This is the ultimate cliffhanger. We have been given a glimpse of the Weaver's star, and then the curtain is drawn. Think about the root country. In Japanese folklore, it is a place of shadows and secrets, but also a place of rebirth. If 3i Atlas is returning there, what is it taking with it? Is it carrying the data of our existence, the sum total of our triumphs and our failures? Or is it simply a piece of hardware returning to the dock for a scheduled maintenance? The irony of our curiosity is that we want to be the center of the story, but the story of 3i Atlas began billions of years ago, and we are just a footnote in one of its later chapters. The countdown is ticking, the rotation is steady, the Weaver's star is waiting. As you drift towards sleep, let the rhythm of the 8-minute pulse become the rhythm of your own thoughts. There is no need for answers tonight. There is only the evidence. There is only the pattern. There is only the vast, silent beauty of a universe that is far more organized than we ever dared to imagine. The Japanese scientists have clarified the rotation. They have given us the numbers, but the meaning is something you must find in the quiet spaces between the ticks of the clock. We are reaching the limit of what optics can tell us. The rest is felt in the marrow of the bone. The star of the Weaver remains fixed. The traveler moves on. The root country calls. And we, the tenants of this very old building, are left to wonder who else is living in the other rooms. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means We can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally: 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing: this shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, Someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something, a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The Comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. "Then don't say it out loud." 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3i Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3i, Atlas isn't a relic of formation. What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy. Another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. every silence a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern, pulses spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm, the kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal, the room around them dark except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random. Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it "not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best: filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. The great silence descends as 3i Atlas crosses the boundary of the Kuiper belt, fading into the eternal night of the deep vacuum. By the end of March 2026, the object is no longer a physical entity to our senses, but a mathematical ghost. We are left with the lingering thought that we were not the ones who discovered it. It was the one that discovered us. The countdown has reached 0, and the sky is empty once more. You might feel a sense of philosophical awe as you drift towards sleep, realizing that the universe is far more crowded and far more silent than we ever dared to imagine. The ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead speaks of the journey through the Dua, a place of shadows where the soul is measured against a feather. Perhaps 3i Atlas was that feather, and our civilization is still waiting for the verdict. The radio telescopes are quiet now, and the monitors have gone dark. There are no more countdowns, No more maneuvers and no more signals. Just the long, slow orbit of a world that is slightly less alone than it was yesterday. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. The great silence is not an absence of sound, but a heavy, saturated presence that lingers in the wake of the interloper. As we move into the final days of March 2026, 3I Atlas has crossed the gravitational boundary where the sun's influence begins to yield to the crushing pressure of the interstellar void. There is a specific kind of melancholy that has settled over the control rooms at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the European Space Operations Center. It is the silence of a house after a guest has left, a guest who never spoke, never looked you in the eye, yet changed the entire atmosphere of the room by simply standing in the corner. We are left with the lingering sense that the verdict has already been reached, and we were simply not privy to the deliberation. Scientists, like Avi Loeb, have begun the long, arduous process of archiving the petabytes of data gathered over the last 8 months. But there is an unspoken consensus that the most important information was never captured by our sensors. The true nature of 3I Atlas resides in the gaps between the data points, in the moments where the instruments flatlined or the telemetry drifted into impossible geometries. We have spent months attempting to measure the shadow of a god with the tools of a surveyor. You might think that the departure of the object brings a sense of relief, a return to the status quo of a lonely universe, but here is where you are wrong. The status quo is dead. We can no longer look at the stars as mere points of light or nuclear furnaces. We must now view them as the potential origin points for 1,000 other watchers. The choice illusion has finally dissolved. We spent the better part of 2025 debating how we should respond, whether we should send a greeting or a warning, as if our tiny, chemical-fueled voices could ever bridge the gap to an entity that maneuvers using the curvature of space-time itself. It is a dry, late-night irony to realize that we were never the ones making the choices. We were the observed variables in a cosmic experiment that has likely been running since the first single-celled organisms appeared in our oceans. Unfortunate timing for our ego. Those two words are doing a great deal of work as we dismantle the high-gain antennas and return to our mundane planetary concerns. Consider the scale of our ignorance. In the 3,600 years until the object's projected return, our cities will rise and fall. Our languages will mutate into unrecognizable sounds, and our current technological triumphs will be buried under layers of silt and dust. Yet, for 3I Atlas, that time is a mere afternoon stroll. It is traveling through deep time, a dimension where human history is nothing more than a flicker of static. The great silence is the only appropriate response to such a realization. It is a quiet, meditative state that allows us to process the fact that we are a temporary phenomenon, witnessing an eternal process. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. The final recorded position of 3I Atlas, before it vanished into the infrared noise of the Oort cloud, showed a trajectory that was perfectly aligned with the star Vega. This was not a random exit. It was a departure toward a specific destination. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has noted that the object's acceleration in the final hours of March was so precise that it appeared to be following a pre-calculated corridor of gravity a highway of the ancients that we are only just beginning to map. We are left with the unresolved final line of our own existence. If the survey is over, what comes next? Is there a second act to this encounter, or have we been filed away in a galactic archive labeled as developing or stagnant? The pattern has closed its loop. From the first grainy images in the Atacama Desert to the final, haunting pulses near the orbit of Jupiter, the story of 3I Atlas has been one of gradual revelation and sudden withdrawal. It is a ritualized listening experience because the cosmos operates on cycles that we are only beginning to perceive. The Sumerian return cycle, the Egyptian duat, the megalithic alignments. All of these were whispers of the same truth. We are not the masters of this house, we are the tenants, and the landlord has just finished the inspection. As the narration slows, let the weight of the great silence settle into your bones. The monitors are dark, but the questions remain luminous. Why did it turn? Why did it pulse? Why did it choose to be seen now, in this specific window of our history? We may never have the technical answers, but the philosophical impact is indelible. We have been touched by the infinite, and the infinite is indifferent. This is the observer effect at its most profound. By seeing the object, we have fundamentally changed how we see ourselves. We are no longer the center of the story, we are the audience. There is a pseudo-academic comfort in the numbers, the 50 kilometers per second, the 85% metallic composition, the 3.6-hour rotation. But these numbers are just the shell of the mystery. The core is something much softer, much more human. It is the feeling of looking up at the night sky and knowing, for the first time with absolute certainty, that someone or something was looking back. You are floating in the wake of a giant. The ripples in space-time are still passing through your room, through your body, through the very fabric of your dreams. Let them carry you away from the noise of the day and into the deep, restorative dark of the great silence. There is nothing left to predict. There is nothing left to measure. There is only the orbit. The long, slow, beautiful orbit of a world that has finally seen the truth. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. The stars are waiting for you, and the traveler is already home. The verdict is in, and the verdict is peace. The mystery is your blanket, and the silence is your guide. Sleep now, in the shadow of the feather. Sleep now, while the universe continues its silent, eternal work. The great silence is not the end. It is the beginning of a new way of being. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow.